Um, Let me acknowledge in our midst the UN Resident Coordinator, Mr. Edward Callon. Let me also appreciate the UNESCO Rosa Regional Director and Representative, my dear friend, Madam Nisha, the UNESCO Rosa Program Specialist, Social and Human Sciences, with whom I've been in the trenches together since we started this program, Dr. Abdul Lamin. Let me also acknowledge the UNFPA, the Deputy Representative, Dr. Abubakar, in our midst. Thank you very much for coming. The Secretary General for UNESCO, Madame Esther, representatives from the Office of the President and Cabinet, representatives of government ministries and departments, academic institutions, I see quite a number. Thank you so much for coming. Research institutions, representatives of state enterprises and parastatals, ICT sector players, and other players, ladies and gentlemen, a very, very good morning to you. Guys, a very good morning to you. Thank you so much. I thought now we would have the energy. From Mutare to Harare, we are almost landing. We've been cruising. And I think that should really excite us, particularly today, that we have even drawn the attention of the UN resident coordinator himself, Mr. Callon, to be present with us and see for himself, hear for himself what we've actually been doing under the support of UNESCO. Indeed, it is great pleasure for me to be here today for the validation workshop on the AI ethics readiness assessment methodology for Zimbabwe. I would really want to express my gratitude, and also on behalf of the Ministry of ICT, Postal and Courier Services, to each and every one of you for your commitment and dedication to advancing the ethical and strategic implementation of AI in our public spaces and making sure that AI is developed and deployed ethically in our nation, following our fruitful and most enlightening expert consultation workshop during the recent Mutare mission. In addition, Resident Coordinator, Madam Nisha, to the consultations in Mutare being instructive, we also had a very significant role in forming our comprehension of the moral ramifications of AI technologies. We explored AI's potential risks, as well as the necessity of robust ethical frameworks to direct its use in a way that upholds human rights. And I'm sure here we have the Human Rights Commissioner in our midst. Thank you very much for coming. Encouraging equity and also supporting openness. We are, ladies and gentlemen, in a digital era where AI applications that you already know, such as Meta AI, DeepSeek, ChatGPT, and so on and so forth, have taken over our cyberspace by storm, exposing us to possible vulnerabilities online. And these can be extended to other AI models in health, in education, and so on and so forth. We need, thus, to be prepared as a people, as a nation of Zimbabwe, so that we are vigilant going forward in line with the developments that are happening elsewhere in the world. I would want to particularly thank the UN family. Thank you very much, Mr. Callon, for coming. And in particular, UNESCO, Madam Nisha, thank you very much for leading the process and for making the workshop in Mutare possible, as well as this particular validation process for which we are gathered here today. We look forward to your continued support. As you may be aware, the first international normative document in this area was the recommendation on the ethics of artificial intelligence, which was endorsed by UNESCO's 193 member states in November 2021. This recommendation provided a thorough and practical framework for the moral advancement and application of this new technology of AI. In order to guarantee accountability, responsibility, transparency, and the requisite rules in a number of crucial policy areas, including gender, the environment, and communication and information, the recommendation outlines the steps that member states must take. The UNESCO Regional Office for Southern Africa launched a pilot program in 2024 to assist, and we are so I think that deserves a hand of applause. UN, that Zimbabwe is one of the 6. I don't know how many countries there are in Southern Africa. If I look at SADC, I think we have about 16, but only 6 were chosen. And we are so proud. We thank you, UNESCO. We thank you, UN, for choosing us to be one of the 6 pilot African nations to conduct a readiness assessment regarding the application and adaptability of AI. We are very grateful for that. The primary goal of the recommendations was to enhance national capacities to carry out the measures outlined in the instrument. We thank UNESCO for developing a program for the implementation of the recommendation while keeping our national values, principles, and policy areas in mind. And also that the readiness assessment methodology is among one of the key or crucial implementation pillars. Ladies and gentlemen, our goal today, why we are gathered here this morning, is to validate the AI ethics readiness assessment methodology. Let me hasten to say, this methodology is more than just a list of rules. It is a representation of our shared, and I'm happy that here we have a cross-cutting representation from all the sectors: academia, education, technical, and so on and so forth. Human rights, we all have them here. That emphasizes inclusivity and accountability while being consistent with our national interests and values. Zimbabwe will leverage on these two to develop our own AI strategy. And when I came back and reported to the minister, I said, Honorable Minister, don't worry about the AI strategy. We've already started. Because I talked to Abdul about it in Mutare, and I could see that now we have a starting point on getting that document done. As we endeavor to adopt and domesticate AI systems and develop our own bespoke AI applications. As we assemble here, I'm encouraging everyone to reflect on the conversations we had in Mutare and to continue in that same collaborative spirit. As we assess the RAM report and make it as applicable, thorough, and customized to Zimbabwe's particular socioeconomic situation, your knowledge, your experience, your contributions, your alertness to issues is extremely useful. Let's work together to take advantage of this chance to validate this document, improve our technique, and eventually create the foundation for an ethical and responsible AI future in Zimbabwe. I'm really looking forward to the final document, which we'll submit to the ministers responsible, the Minister of ICT, and which will be a stepping stone to where we would want to get to as Zimbabwe. I wish you all successful deliberations for the next 2 days. Thank you. Tatenda, siyabonga. Thank you very much.
Cannot have such a low voice. Is it good morning? Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Madam P.S. Bichirome, UN Resident Coordinator Mr. Edward Callan, our very own Secretary General of Zimbabwe National Commission for UNESCO, Madam Chirapa, UNHCR Representative Babakar Bamba, Deputy Representative of UNFPA Abubakar Sisse, distinguished officials, dear colleagues, and researchers and academics present today. It is my honor to be with you, a special delight to be finally coming to this point when we are going to validate the RAM report and rearing towards a follow-up action. We will hear about a lot of drawbacks that artificial intelligence is making us see, or we see in artificial intelligence. At the same time, it is also equally important to recognize some of the promising trends. We often say good and evil exist together, they coexist. We choose based on our leanings. And I wish to congratulate the government of Zimbabwe for choosing to lean on the side of ethical regulation of artificial intelligence. Let me point out a few of the promising trends in AI regulation globally. And I'm very happy to say Africa is catching up. It's not yet there, but catching up. And when I heard Madam P.S. speak, I felt confident that Zimbabwe is all set to go. These promising trends will sound like music to the ears of our human rights colleagues here. One of them is that there is a greater buzz around inclusivity in AI, multilingualism in AI, inclusion of African continent in models that are being used for AI. So this regional, ethnic, linguistic dimensions are important for making AI wholesome and for its better use. Second is transparency. As much as AI is creating a lot of worry, there is a growing trend towards importance and essentiality in bringing about access to information and greater transparency, especially in an environment where stakes are very high. Citizens often do not know what's happening in their environment. The third one, especially from the perspective of governance, is accountability. AI's uses is demonstrating that it can support not only citizen participation in governance, it can also bring about greater accountability, especially in areas of service delivery, in identifying needs and matching it with services. The fourth area, which is, I think, at present a very important domain of concern, is data privacy and data protection. this conversation would not have reached the scale it has, would not have dominated the regulatory eye that it has today, if it were not for some mishaps in AI usage. So good and evil have to continue together, but it has initiated a conversation that is bringing member states of our organization together to look at how do they better manage privacy and data security, data integrity. The sixth area is that of the regulatory frameworks. Madam PS spoke about it, the need for an AI strategy, the need for ethical regulation. If AI did not have these promising values, it would not be on the government agenda. It would have been left for the private sector to manage. But because it has this great potential of doing good as well as doing harm, it needs to be regulated. And a final positive trend that I would like to point out, that there is an increasing recognition of monitoring of AI from ethical perspective, but also from the perspective of multi-stakeholder participation. And the process of developing this RAM report, data collection, indicates that it would not have been possible to get the wider landscape information if it were not for the multi-stakeholder participation. Question, of course, then often comes, why UNESCO is setting norms and standards around AI? Why UNESCO member states are driving the organization to do more and more? There are few answers to that, one of which was very well captured by Madam Chirume, and that is related to human rights and dignity. AI technologies can influence human thinking. This is no longer a joke. Interaction and decision making. There is an increasing evidence and conversation of growing emotional intelligence in humanoids. So the boundary between who controls who is getting blurred. So the agenda of human rights and dignity is more and more important. Second is, AI is driven by global tech giants. Their nature, their operations are such that they cannot be regulated by any one country. So global cooperation is fundamentally crucial. UNESCO, as that intergovernmental fora, is tasked to facilitate that global cooperation. Third is the issue of bias and discrimination. I think it was in 2016 or 17, UNESCO published the first report which focused on AI and gender. Nobody was thinking about AI and gender in those days. The report was called, "I Would Blush If I Could." All of you might have heard of Siri. Hey Siri, do this. All the Apple phone, Apple device owners. So UNESCO technical expert was investigating this issue and asked this AI voice a question which was a sexist in nature. And the AI voice was modeled to react in a very stereotypical manner. And Siri replied, instead of reacting, showing anger, showing opposition to what was said, in a very soft voice, I would blush if I could. It showed sexism in AI. And that became the basis for further diagnostic into gender dimension of AI. Fourth is sustainable development. We all know SDGs by heart. We have 5 years to do something about these goals. UNESCO is looking at constructive, positive use of AI to enable or to fast track attainment of some of these goals, including the areas of conservation, disaster risk management. There are many ways in which AI can play a positive role. Fifth one is inclusive development. We work on disability inclusion. Most of the UN agencies present here have a stake in that arena. Most of us have a stake in the field of health. The amazing wonders that AI can do to fast track our well-being in those areas is immense. And finally, a point that UNESCO highlights is the need for global governance and regulation of AI. And UNESCO is trying to promote that through uniform standards, by generating dialogue and conversations about prevention of misuse, not stopping misuse, but taking proactive steps to anticipate and prevent. Third is addressing global challenges around equity in access to these frontier technologies. Fifth is UNESCO is seeing AI as a great opportunity to safeguard and make available AI for intergenerational transfer of diverse knowledge systems that exist in the world. Of course, we have a great interest in mitigating bias. Bias against people with disabilities, biased against women and girls, biased against minorities, biased against anyone who is on the fringe. And two other areas where we see broader consensus include: one, enhancing security. So AI does not damage national security, does not damage individual concerns of safety and security. And the second area where there is already global consensus, which was evidenced by the reference to DeepSeek in PSS's statement, that is innovation. DeepSeek indeed is a marvelous example of how older technology and modern technology can be brought together to make AI accessible to all. So, in a summary, UNESCO's efforts are guided by the human rights criteria, norms and standards that are globally accepted, endorsed and promoted by the member states, and of course, a deep faith in its own mission of promoting free flow of ideas for building peace in this world. Allow me to once again congratulate the government of Zimbabwe in taking this positive step towards AI regulation, and wishing you a wonderful day, very fruitful discussion, and we are looking forward to validation of this work so we are able to assist further in taking forward this agenda. Thank you so much.
Technologies are blurring traditional boundaries of the physical, digital, and biological world, impacting all disciplines, economies, and industries, and from a philosophical point of view, even challenging ideas about what it means to be a human. In view of these realities, countries across the globe are increasingly positioning themselves to take full advantage presented by these technological innovations, and in particular, artificial intelligence, to advance their respective national development agendas and consequently transform the lives of their citizens. It is, however, also true that as transformative as these technologies are, there are many risks associated with them, both inherent and overt, that cannot be overlooked and hence must be addressed by countries to ensure that development and application of AI systems in both the public and private sector are ethically compliant. Ladies and gentlemen, AI governance is therefore one of the most consequential challenges of our times, calling for mutual commitment and learning based on lessons and good practices emerging from different authorities around the world. In 2024, the UN adopted the Global Digital Compact, a comprehensive framework for the global governance of digital technology and artificial intelligence as part of the Pact of the Future. This was pivotal in 2021 by the adoption of UNESCO's recommendation on the ethical nature of artificial intelligence by 193 member states of the organizations, with Zimbabwe being one of them. Both UNESCO's AI ethics recommendation and the UN's Global Compact commit governments to accountability and responsibility in the development and application of artificial intelligence, ensuring that this is underpinned by a commitment to safely and care, taking into consideration the importance of producing the right and dignity of all people. Madam PS, ladies and gentlemen, UNESCO's development of a readiness assessment tool to help nations evaluate their AI preparedness is both timely and innovative. In this regard, I commend UNESCO and the government of Zimbabwe for its efforts to already take appropriate steps at multiple levels, including the policy and regulatory domains, to prepare the country for the positive development of AI systems across sectors for public good. Working closely with UNESCO to document these efforts through the RAM exercise as part of a 6-country pilot in Southern Africa, this including Botswana, Malawi, Mozambique, Namibia, South Africa, and Zimbabwe, places Zimbabwe in an outstanding position to address the risk and challenges associated with AI. This is clearly an important starting point for key actions that we eventually estimate or emanate from the RAM recommendation and link those with the elaboration of the Global Digital Compact. On behalf of the UN system in Zimbabwe, I therefore want to assure the government of Zimbabwe of our full commitment to support the country in building on and consolidating the gains being made from the exercise as we move along. I know you are all moving now fast towards a very important instrument. That's the national strategy for AI in Zimbabwe. I was just telling the peers that this is really, really urgent because we are sensing what we are calling a geopolitical, ethic, and economic implications of AI that need to be addressed, and the various cautions taken to ensure that this technology actually supports development aspirations rather than undermining them. The chances that it can undermine development aspirations of countries do exist. And it can come from an ethical perspective, from a technological perspective, and also from an economic perspective. So the more countries are prepared, the better they are to confront some of the unpleasant and positive aspects of this technology, which we all think is so critical for the 21st century and so critical to transform human lives in general. So I really want to congratulate you for coming together. I'm very impressed to see the amount of technical think tank around tables here who are looking into this issue of AI and advising the government on appropriate steps to take. So thank you again for this effort. Please don't despair. It's a period of challenge for all of us, and it's a time for us also to position Africa as indeed a beneficiary of the AI technology. Thank you very much.
Let's give him a round of applause as he takes his seat. Our UN resident coordinator, Mr. Kalon. Thank you.
Need to be aware at the back of our minds around that subject matter. I will start by just making a few comparisons. I'm going to go through the 13 or 14 parameters that ITU, ATU, and SADC use around the ICT sector, infrastructure, issues around internet penetration, mobile networks, and all that. I'll only pick just a few. As SADC and as Zimbabwe, around the issue of mobile penetration, the average SADC percentage is around 95.2%. And the Zimbabwe, in that area, the mobile penetration is around 98.7%. We look at internet penetration, SADC average 57.2. Zim1, I don't have the latest one, but it was around 58.4 the last time that I checked. But I can confirm that later. Looking at the mobile network coverage, that is by geographic, SADC average is 74.9%, whilst Zimbabwe is 78.2%. Then the other parameter that I would also want us to keep at the back of our mind, it's population coverage, at least 3G. SADC average is 88.5. This one as well, I will also need to check on the latest figures, but the one that I have here from last year, Zimbabwe is around 89.3 thereabout. So this is the general key factors that will actually even affect when we adopt new technologies, the AI that we are talking about, IoT and everything, and allied new technologies. Maybe this figure as well, we need to know about it. ICT GDP contribution to the economy. In 2024, ICT contribution to the Zim GDP stood at 6.9%. This is public knowledge. Let me direct you right now. If you are on the internet, you can check these figures on the SADC ICT Observatory. You can get this information and a host of other very interesting statistics there. Now coming to the program that we are gathered here today, the validation of our AI, Zimbabwe AI Readiness Assessment Methodology Report. As our principals have already indicated, we should take cognizance of the fact that this RAM report that we are here gathered to validate is not just a list of rules. We need to take cognizance of the fact that when we do the validation, at the back of our minds, we should know that the drive to have the RAM report is to enhance national capacity, to adopt and domesticate AI in our systems, in our governments, in our companies, in our daily interactions as a community, as a society. We should also be keeping at the back of our conscience the need to align its adoption with the national values, national principles, and the police trust of Zimbabwe. I have earlier on alluded to that the validation of the Zimbabwe AI ethics RAM report is more than just a list of rules. It is actually a shared vision. A shared vision that should bring everyone on board. So inclusivity is key. And also accountability is key. I think when we heard the remarks and the speeches in the morning, it was playing around accountability, inclusivity, issues around sustainability. And as we go through the process of the validation of this RAM report, we do have to take cognizance of those facts. I don't want to be preemptive. I hope every one of us in this room has read through the document that was shared. If there's anyone who doesn't have the draft document, that is actually taken all the inputs from Mutare, we can actually indicate to the Secretariat and we get the latest copy. At this point in time, let me end here and invite Prof. Then we can go to the next bullet point where we have our UNESCO team. Thank you, everyone. Let's have a great validation session, and I believe we can come up with an excellent document that we'll be proud of as Zimbabwe, that we'll be proud of as a team that has been gathered to come up with this report. Thank you.
I told you, I said my shoulder is a work in progress. I don't know if it has progressed, but I keep going. Yeah. Good morning. Very nice to be here. This morning when I saw some of you, I kept saying, I was thinking about you last night because as we were preparing for today, I reflected on Mutare, where I met many of you. I saw my brother and I was saying, Prof, I thought of you this morning, and I saw my sister. I said the same thing. So it's good to be here, and it's good to see that the energy that we built in Mutare has come to Harare, and we are now thinking of finalizing this phase and moving to the next phase. So thank you very much for all your hard work. We have seen the product. We know that this is still a work in progress, but a lot of progress has happened. So I just want to, therefore, in addition to the tone that has been set in giving us the domestic landscape, to put this in the context of what is happening globally. I mean, some of you in your responses were talking about the need to extract from international instruments but domesticating it. So I want to use this opportunity to say a few words about the work that UNESCO initiated within the context of the Readiness assessment methodology, which is part of the normative instrument, and to just give a brief presentation. I'm sure most of you in this room have seen this presentation anyway, so the substance is not really very different, but of course this is another level that we are going, so it's always good to remind ourselves. Teachers normally say, repetition is not good. When you repeat something too much, it's not good, but then repetition sometimes is good for the sake of emphasis. So if I repeat things that I've said before, please excuse me. I don't mean to bore you. I just want to emphasize the point. So quickly, I'll run through. It's not going to be a long slide, trust me. I mean, about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 items, but I'll run through them quickly. I will just start off with, giving you a brief overview of UNESCO's work in AI and digital transformation. It is important to understand that UNESCO does not look at AI just from an ethical point of view, even though our conversation is largely framed around the ethics of AI, but we are doing much more than just the ethical dimension. So I think it's important from the outset that we set that tone, and then of course we will go into the recommendation itself and all of the evidence. So next slide. Now, in terms of our digital landscape and AI landscape, I think it's important to mention some of the key areas of work. And some of you in this room anyway are familiar with a lot of this work because we work with you on a regular basis. So for instance, now we are in the process of finalizing the RAM and validating it. This has been part of a collective, inclusive exercise. We also work to build the capacity of civil servants through UNESCO Digital Transformation and AI Competency Framework, which has developed a number of training programs to get public officials familiar with AI. I think it has been said more than enough that AI is with us now, and Professor Muchiri was saying, if you don't know AI, then it's on you, because it's here now, it's here to stay. So we are doing that work. We are also supporting countries to develop media information literacy policies. I'm very happy to see our brother here, Dr. Wandari, from the Ministry of Information. I'm sure he's worked on this. And here I want to acknowledge my colleague, Alamin Yusuf, who many of you in this room have worked with. He wanted to be here, but unfortunately, his schedule couldn't permit him to be here. But hopefully, we'll see. We're here for today and tomorrow. He probably might be able to free up some time. But just to say that he's worked with many of you developing the MIL, the support that we provide in providing and creating a space for dialogue among multiple stakeholders. I'm sure some of you are aware of the Information for All program, the IFA. I'm aware that the PS, for instance, is very active in the IFA program. I believe at one point, or if I'm not mistaken, she was the chair of the Africa group. So this is part of work that we are already doing. And then, of course, we deploy community-based early warning solutions using the Internet of Things. Again, you are familiar with this, Dr. Gandari, and many others in this room. So I guess it is just to recap, to say that AI has not just jumped into the field, we have been working. Alamid actually likes to say, and I like this, say, all of this work are the building blocks, in preparation for now deploying AI. And he likes to say, AI now has become a buzzword. Everybody is using AI, but the question is, where do you place AI in the broader debate on digital transformation? So I think it's important to get that recap. The recommendations came in 2021. I don't need to go through, all the elements. You're already familiar. You've heard about it. You have read it. Some of you've read the report. Zimbabwe was one of those countries. And, I'm going to repeat what has been said before and, what I know to be a fact, because I was in UNESCO headquarters. I was based in Paris at the time that the recommendation was negotiated, and I can assure you that the voice of Southern Africa was very strong, and Zimbabwe was one of those members. So I'm very happy that Zimbabwe is taking this step now to really begin to operationalize the instrument. Again, we're doing around, and then of course there is an ethical impact assessment, which is also another tool that we have developed, which is again designed to guide stakeholders in developing and using AI. Many of you here are from the public sector. You work in government through procurement, and increasingly we are digitalizing our public sector to be able to provide better services to our people. And this is where digital technologies and in particular AI comes into play. So it is important also that as public officials whose responsibility it is to provide services to citizens are aware with the risks associated with AI. I think we need to underline again, and keep emphasizing that the UNESCO instrument is in no way suggesting that AI is so bad that we can't use it. All it's saying is it can be transformative. It is transformative. It's doing a lot of good things, but we must be mindful, in the use to ensure that we take into account the ethical implications and the dangers that they may pose. So it is important, therefore, that we do that. The key elements of the recommendation, I wouldn't go just to say, the first point I made already. It's a huge opportunity for us. In development discourse, they normally talk about leapfrogging, from one stage to the other. We're talking about the fourth industrial revolution, which means there have been 3 industrial revolutions before. This is the 4th one. And Africa is now trying to place itself in that 4th industrial revolution. Have we gone through those first 2 stages, the 3 stages? I don't know, I'm not an expert, but suffice to say, we are now in the 4th industrial revolution. So the question is, if we are still in the 2nd stage of the industrial revolution, then we have to think about leapfrogging. And AI can indeed assist us in doing that. But in doing so, we must also be mindful of the risks. So it's a question of mitigating those risks. The resident coordinator was talking earlier on about the geopolitical environment in which we find ourselves, and the impact that is having on multiple levels of discussion, you know, and the whole role, the centrality of data and analytical data, for that matter, you know, in our development efforts. So I think it's important to say that, you know, AI is here. It's here to stay. It can do a lot of good things, but let's also balance it. It's underpinned by those values that we all know, respect for human rights. The commissioner here, I was telling him this morning how impressed I was in Tare, you know, in the discussion on the human rights dimensions, you know, and the work that they are doing in the Human Rights Commission. The whole principles of proportionality, do no harm, you know, and the 11 policy areas that are outlined, you know, in the recommendation on the ethics of artificial intelligence. Next slide. Yeah, those areas are outlined again. You can read up on this, but I just want to pick up on one, you know, policy area number 5 on the environment and ecosystems. This is important because when we begin to talk about climate change, which is a reality in this region, and by the way, I should mention also that UNESCO in 2017 developed an ethical instrument on climate change, the ethics of climate change. And in that instrument, along with previous instruments that have been developed, there's one thing that cuts across. Then, you know, the principle of human rights and human dignity is across. But I think it's important to say that as we think about climate change, the question becomes, how do we deploy AI solutions or digital solutions to address the challenges of whether it's drought, which has impact on food security. So I think in a sense, what we're saying is that there's a convergence in terms of the elements of both instruments. So I think it's important when we look at those policy areas, we see also how they would link to other areas, you know, that we are already working on. Next slide. Again, you know, no need to go into the details of this. We've already talked about it. At some point, we will be engaging on the ethical impact analysis, but for now, we are basically concerned with you know, this diagnostic exercise that we are involved in. I think the point has been made repeatedly that this is not just an exercise of documenting. This is actually very instructive in terms of where Zimbabwe wants to go moving forward. So, you know, just to mention that. And to put this in a regional context, of course, you've heard about the pilot, that this exercise is part of the pilot in 6 countries. The PS was quite right to say that to the extent that Zimbabwe was identified as one of those countries in the RAM, it's very, very important. And Professor Mushiri just gave us a very important piece of information about the development of an AI strategy in Zambia. Why is that important? It's important because Zambia is actually not part of the RAM at the moment, but they are already ahead of the game. Because as we see in the RAM, one of the recommendations, does the country have an AI strategy? And in Zimbabwe's case, we're going to have a discussion on that. There isn't one, but Zambia is already there. They're moving already. So I think there is a need for us to also reflect in that dimension. The other 6 countries, we know them. The 5 thematic areas that are being assessed, we know them because we've read the instrument, the document already. They are out there. And of course, the process, you know, from where we have started to where we are, we started with the collection of data and analyzing that data, and we want to acknowledge and thank our good friend, Dr. Bwakwa, for being able to put all of that, synthesize it into a report which became the baseline for our discussion, which we had in Mutare, and now we have enhanced that. Now we are doing this validation, and then of course, after the validation, we will submit the report. Next slide. And so, you know, so beyond this round, what next? That's the question. I just came back from Paris last week. We had a global staff retreat, and one of the discussions was precisely what happens after the rounds. You know, what are we doing? Because This is a global exercise. It's happening across the world. In this region, 6 countries. But so far, based on the last number that I have, I think we've had over 60, 70 countries now globally that are involved in doing a RAM exercise in one way or the other. In a few weeks from now, we'll be in Namibia to validate their RAM report, and then we'll go to Malawi to do it in a few weeks after that. And then we will pretty much be done with Southern Africa, well, with the exception of Botswana, which we are also working on to finalize. But the point is to say that this is now part of the conversation, what happens, and this is where collectively, we will have to apply our minds. It is important that already the government has set an agenda to develop the AI strategy for Zimbabwe, and I was happy that the UN was here to see how we can work with Zimbabwe to move forward. So this is what we must be thinking about. In June, there will be a global summit on AI. It's a statutory meeting essentially provided for in the recommendation that UNESCO should work with countries to host global summits every 2 years. So the next one is going to be in Thailand, Bangkok, from 24 to 27. It's going to be high level. There will be ministerial segment, there will be technical discussion. So it is very important that we are finalizing this exercise now in Zimbabwe. So Zimbabwe will be one of those proud countries that will be represented, I hope, at the highest level in that summit, to say that when Zimbabwe and other member states commit themselves globally, it is not just about saying we support, but we are actually taking action to do it. So I think this is important also. And then, of course, the programmatic aspects of the recommendation, we talk about the strategy. And then lastly, you had the UN Resident Coordinator mention the adoption of the Pact of the Future, which has an instrument on the Global Digital Compact, which is directly relevant, again, to this AI instrument. We are already beginning to discuss how do you elaborate that Global Compact and link it to the work that we are doing in the area of the ethics of AI. Which is to say that we have a full course menu already awaiting us. Perhaps one of the things that I would say already, and I know that at the technical level there's already some thinking going into this. Once we finalize this report, we will work with our technical people to have maybe a very short presentation of some of the key findings of the report, which is documented obviously in the report. But I think in the interest of advocacy also, we need to have that kind of tool to be able to reach multiple constituencies to say that this is what is happening in Zimbabwe, it is happening in the region. But I think I was citing some of the statistics in terms of the digital landscape. He was talking about what is happening in the SADC region. So we are able to say that this is what we have found in the area of infrastructure. Yesterday we had a very interesting discussion with colleagues from ITU, where we were talking a lot about building the digital infrastructure. And I know again, this is an area of work for you. So it's important that we're able to synthesize that, and to provide some kind of infographics, if you will. The information, some statistics, and all of that, moving forward. So with that, next slide. That's it for my presentation. You have our website, you have all the information, and we will be happy to respond to any question. But I just want to appreciate all of you for the hard work, and thank you very much.